morning from Taiwan and good evening from US or Nigeria or other worlds. Thank you for your attending this meeting. Uh, Today, we are really very honored to host this event. For this event, we need to know women's menstruation during the pandemic is a quite important issue for us. Let me introduce our speakers today. For I will from myself first. As the first, I'm today's moderator, and please give me my profile. I'm sorry, a little bit slow for the sharing from our side. I'm Shuwen Kao, the founder, president of Tainan Mulan Association. Well, our organization just started since last year, and we are local NGOs in Tainan. We we advocate for girls and women's rights, especially focus on single women and menstruation education. Here are my experience to NGO CSW. So if there's any questions regarding for this meeting later, you can contact me by my email. Here is my information. Thank you. All right. So let's welcome our first speakers as is Dr. Chinwin Ani. Let me introduce her a little bit. Please pull up for her file. Hi, Dr. Ani, can you give us a hand?
Hi, everyone.
Oh, Dr. Ani is a senior consultant and lecturer with the University of Calabar Teaching Hospital. Yes, as you see in the profile, she's highly entrepreneurial with track record, success for profit and non-profit organizations. And she is creative, innovative, and performance-driven with strong capacity to manage multiple projects on strict deadlines. And she is a former president of the Medical Women's Association of Nigeria, Cross River State Chapter 2016 to 2018. Immediate past vice chairman of the Nigerian Medical Association, Cross River State Branch, and currently president and founder, Pink Africa Foundation. So please welcome Dr. Ani on the stage to give us a speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Good morning, everybody. Good evening where you are, and good afternoon if where you are is afternoon. Am I to go ahead with my presentation?
Yes, the system is still working.
Okay, so So today it's my singular honor to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on women's menstruation. I'll be giving you the perspective of the occurrences that happened in southern Nigeria, West Africa. My name is Nchewe Elemiani. I'm a consultant radiologist, as you were well told. I'm also a humanitarian, and I am I have participated in over 60 medical community outreaches, and most of the information we're going to share with you is from a few of the outreaches that were done in Cross River State. So please, can you go to the next slide? Is it possible for me to control my slide from here? By way of introduction, it's important to note that periods did not stop during the pandemic. And some parts of the world are still experiencing the brunt of the pandemic currently. Periods did not go away. They didn't go on leave. They just continued. And as a woman, you know that you have no power over your periods. You just know that there's a certain rhythm it takes every month, and you experience it if you're within the reproductive ages of 9 to 55 years of age for most women, or 45 plus or minus 10 years of age. Nearly half of the world menstruates. Nearly half of the world menstruates, but only 1/4 of that population have access to adequate menstrual hygiene materials. One of the most fundamental parts of human rights is rights to health. Unfortunately, the rights to health, with emphasis on sexual and reproductive health, is underexpressed in many climes of the world, and in Africa it's not left out. It is estimated that 1.8 billion women menstruate, and that's inclusive of our young girls. Yet 1/4 of that population are unable to manage their menstrual health, right? A lot of women are faced with the reality of lack of access to adequate menstrual health products. No access to soap, water, tissue, tampons. To say the least, perfumes come very last on the list. No access to basic hygienic materials. Some don't have access to sanitation. Some people face the problems of inadequate disposal of menstrual products, byproducts that are used. And top on the list is the lack of period awareness, where the girl child is not properly introduced into puberty, introduced into the life cycle or the lifestyle of menstruation, and how to cater for her health during the menstrual period. Before the pandemic, we had deep-seated, rooted taboos and misconceptions that shrouded menstruation. And the lack of basic amenities or basic menstrual health materials also existed before the pandemic. But these unmet needs of menstrual hygiene worsened during the pandemic. The pandemic took a huge toll on women, from no access to menstrual hygiene materials to use of unhygienic products with resultant pelvic inflammatory diseases and soft fertility. Some women experienced what I term post menses. During the pandemic, we found that some women were forced to be in enclosed spaces with the opposite sex, some out of volition, some forcefully, and they ended up with unplanned pregnancies, unwanted pregnancies. And if it happened to adolescents who had unwanted pregnancies, they couldn't take care of the babies, so they looked for means of terminating the pregnancies, and we had an increase on upsurge of unsafe abortions with resultant complications, and a few of these girls died from unsafe abortions. So the effect of the pandemic is not what we can just write off. And then in addition to the post-menstruation, so people had post-menstruation as a result of sexual violence. Some people experienced rape, and menses was put on hold for this caliber of people. Please, the next slide. So for us as Pink Africa Foundation, in the following slides, we're going to try and talk about what really happened during the pandemic in the last 2 years, and how we were able, to provide succor in several quarters. For us, during the pandemic, our regular rural training of girls on how to make the washable parts was put on hold or minimized to barest minimum. Before, we used to train in crowds of about 50 to 100 girls. Now we just had to do 20. in a community space. It had to be in an open field. We had to source for hand washing materials. We had to source for face masks, face shields. We had to source for hand sanitizers to take all the necessary precautions before we could do one training. And then another thing we found out that we had difficulty sourcing for materials to actually provide the menstrual hygiene training for eco-friendly pads. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, the first thing we realized was that period poverty was at its peak. No access to menstrual hygiene products. We had lots of lockdowns, unpredictable lockdowns. We had borders that were closed. Products were not coming from neighboring states or from neighboring countries. We had stores and markets closed. So first thing the women experienced was that those who depended on daily income, generated daily income, were unable to generate their daily income, and so couldn't even purchase the menstrual pad. It takes about $3 or $4 to obtain one menstrual pad. If it's at the normal rate, $2 to $4, depending on where you live, to purchase one menstrual pad. An average woman makes like $1 a day or $1.5 a day. So she will have to work for many days to be able to afford a pad. And now she cannot even go to work to even make the money. So we had no income for women, so they couldn't afford pads. They had to resort to unhealthy, unhygienic materials. The second thing that happened with us, the stores and the shop owners couldn't access products from neighboring states because of lockdowns and closed borders. So we didn't have access to menstrual hygiene materials. And then the people had the shops that had the menstrual materials that opened on specific days, say in a whole day in a week. A community would have only 2 market days to access the market. We had hike in prices of menstrual hygiene products from 400 naira, which is about $1, to like 1,000 naira, which is like $2 plus for one menstrual pad. That's what we experienced during the lockdown. And then we also found out that the local manufacturers that manufactured the pads diverted their attention from pad production to production of personal protective materials. Top on the charts were the face mask and the face shields. So companies that used to produce the face mask, used to produce the menstrual materials, found it more profitable to go into the production of face masks to earn them more money. So women were also forced to manage whatever they had to, take care of their menstrual needs. Next slide, please. In addition to the lock-up stores and lock-up to the lock borders, what did we find out from my experiences or from our interactions with the women? Also, alternatives to menstrual hygiene products included old clothes, old wrappers. Take a piece of it, fold it, and use it to soak up blood. Old clothes, pants, that you fold one pants and use it to collect blood. And if you don't have more than 5 pants, that means you can't go around the week. Some resorted to pants and socks, fold it, it becomes a receptacle for blood. You collect the blood and you wash it. Some people had no access to those extra materials, so they made use of old newspapers, old clothes, old school notebooks or textbooks. And those in the rural spaces made use of dry leaves, plantain leaves, easy to go. You collect your blood and you go your way. Now, the side effects of using those hygienic products, they run into a myriad of them. First of all, those unhygienic products can predispose you to pelvic infections. Poorly treated pelvic infections results in subfertility. You're unable to get pregnant when you're supposed to. And if that is continuous, it can result in infertility as a whole. Now, unable to purchase menstrual materials, the family also suffers in the process because money that's supposed to be used to buy menstrual material has to be used to purchase food. That's what we found out. And then people started having notions about the vaccinations and alteration in menstrual cycles, which are still unfounded up till now. So there's currently some research going on trying to marry alterations in menstrual cycles with the vaccines. We don't know if there's any concrete evidence as to the relationship. Please, next slide. And schools were put on hold. Some girls in the rural spaces have access to periodic menstrual materials, like in some secondary schools, they can go to the sick bay and have access to the menstrual hygiene, especially the washable pads. But because of the lockdown, no schools, these girls had no access to the menstrual materials. The sexual education that included the teachings of puberty and menstrual hygienes were also put on hold. So in these last 2 years, the girls have missed schools. They have no knowledge about period. They have no knowledge about how to manage themselves. They have no access on how to debunk the myths that surround menses. So if they find themselves in communities where these myths are shrouded, they are taken up, they are immersed in these myths, and only God knows what kind of girls we are going to breed in the next dispensation. Because of limited access to critical information, were disrupted. And the disruption in regular lifestyle, going to fend for yourself, ability to purchase your food products and your menstrual materials, a lot of women got into depression, suicidal tendencies. These and more are most of the impact we experience on our own end during the lockdown. Next slide, please. So our strategy to mitigate against this burden on women, what did we do? In the first year of the pandemic, we held little outreaches outdoor. We reduced the number of trainings from maybe 100 to like 20 girls per session. And this gentleman you see are he for she, men who support what women are doing. The first on the list with the pink Africa shirt is actually the Big Brother housemate, former Big Brother housemate, Ambassador Gedoni, who is actually a bespoke tailor. He sews wonderfully. He's an engineer, and he tried to come out with us on that community trip. Long trip away from the state, and then we got here. We taught the girls how to sew the washable pads. I'm an advocate of the washable pads. It's eco-friendly, it's durable, it's recyclable. You can wash it and use it for between 12 to 16 months, and it's pocket-friendly. So we taught the girls how to get the washable pads. I forgot to tell you, we usually source for these materials 8 hours away from our city. But because of the lockdown, we were forced to locally source for the materials. We bought them for 4 times the amount we usually used to buy. And not every part was readily available. We had to make substitutes, but they were healthy substitutes from our own end. So these are the experiences we had. So the young men here taught the girls, and we also have some females. I'm emphasizing on the young men because it's not usual to find men who are interested in women's health. But these ones took out their time, their money to support the production of these materials, and they came with us to the rural spaces. The next thing we did, next slide please, was to organize, to fill up the period awareness poverty gap, was to organize an online competition on my first menses, where we wanted the girls to send us, those who were experiencing their first menses during the COVID-19 pandemic, send us their experiences, what they experienced, how was it, what is it you were told, what is it you were not told, how was your first experience. We were able to collect 580 stories of first menses from people all over Nigeria. We had a few entries from outside the country. We as Pink Africa Foundation, we're hoping to partner with Pink Mulan and any other organization who wants to partner with us to produce our first 20,000 copies. We want to help to, and in between the books, we will have stories of first menses from notable women around the world. So we can encourage these children, and then we have some excerpts from doctors to tell them about menstrual hygiene, what to expect, what not to do, and how to have a healthy menstrual lifestyle for your reproductive period on Earth. And the next thing we also did was to go to the streets of the markets, went to the streets of the campuses, on the marketplaces, to try and, reduce the taboos. It's a taboo to say men are menstruating in some parts of the country. Can't just say, oh, let's talk about menses in public. People shy away from it. We're trying to reduce the stigma attached to menses by talking in the open space about menses. So if you click on any of the links, one of the links, it will take you to our stories on the streets. And I'm glad that our media consultant, Mrs. Grace, is here. She's present. She helped us to get that done. And then the next thing we did was that during the pandemic, we realized that most of the NGOs and the government parastatals providing palliatives did not include menstrual materials as part of palliative. You will see lots of bags of rice, beans, grains, drinks, foodstuff, noodles, no tissue paper, no pads, no tampons, no washable materials, not washable materials that can be used for menstruation. So we went to the airwaves, and we went to the media, and that particular media program was sponsored by Heat FM in collaboration with Ford Foundation. So the whole world heard us, and we said to them, please, when you're giving all the palliatives, include menstrual hygiene materials. First of all, the prices have been heightened, excuse me, from $1 to like $4, $5, $3, $4 in most regions. And some people don't even have access to it. So if you have access to bring in food materials, please include menstrual hygiene materials, especially for the women in enclosed spaces like the prisons, the shelters, the refugee camps, and the IDP camps. Make sure that menstrual hygiene materials are part of it. And then in the quarantine areas, where they had to quarantine people or set people apart that were infected, sometimes most camps didn't have menstrual hygiene materials. People who were quarantined were forced to outsource those materials for themselves. And that's a little bit of the things that we did as Pink Africa Foundation. Please, next slide. I don't know if we've captured everything. This is a cross-section of the winners, those who won the competition out of 580 girls, one from WAPI and the other one from Christ the King Catholic School. Next slide, please. And the face of Pink Africa Foundation, Mrs. Regina Ido, is there. This is our outreach open space where we did the initial training in 2020 in May. Next slide, please. This is our last meeting with the girls outside. This one, I think this was in January, where we talked about menstrual hygiene materials and the fact that every girl needs to know more about menstrual hygiene. Next slide, please. So these are our participants at Akpabuyu, and this is the training. It was in collaboration with GPI, Girls Power Initiative, Brain Care Foundation, and we also had the Primary Healthcare Development Agency, Cross River State. The DG was present. She came and partook in the training and also helped the young girls with menstrual hygiene materials. So it was a robust training for us. Next slide, please. Yes, and in 2020, we had the cycle beats, that talked about the 5 days of menses and the remaining number of days. And we taught the girls how to count to know the safe periods and the periods that are not safe. And then we talked about the fact that you need to maintain hygiene, utmost hygiene when you're menstruating to protect your reproductive life. Next slide, please. And during the pandemic, Pink Africa Foundation, in addition to producing washable pads, we produced thousands of face shields. They were made by our volunteers, and we shared to many schools in Nigeria. Next slide. So in conclusion, I would like to say that the COVID-19 pandemic clearly demonstrated to us a the inadequacies of our social systems and our health systems. The fact that we must not leave everything for the government. Individuals, groups of people, organizations, philanthropists should take women's health as a priority because the consequences are there, from infertility to unsafe abortions to even death. And if you save a woman's life, you save the life of an entire community. You will not say it does not concern you. It concerns all of us. I thank you for this opportunity to talk about the impact of menstrual hygiene in Nigeria during the pandemic. I look forward to listening to the other speakers, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ani. So for all the participants, if you have any question, you can leave your questions in the message box, and we will try to reply you as soon as possible. So can I bring out one question for Dr. Ani? You just showed the YouTube's address for the campaign, right? In the slide. Yeah. Can you put out that video from your side?
Okay, which of the videos do you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we could have that video, it would be great to see more.
I don't know, can someone else, can we take entertain questions while I'm trying to get this out? I don't seem to have the link handy. Let me see. Right.
Hey, Dr. Ani, we can show the video from our side.
Can you show from your side?
Yes.
Okay.
Or the champagne, that advertisement. Let's see.
Hello, good day, and welcome to Pink Africa Foundation. I'm Endurance Benjamin, the Creative Director of Pink Africa Foundation. And this is
Joshua, the Assistant Creative Director of Pink Africa Foundation.
All right, today we'll be showing you how to make reusable parts. And looking at the table here, we have some materials. You could see and the essence of the paper is that we can get our measurements right. So we have this. You have your plain paper. You tend to fold it into two, and you look at this. It is way longer. Why is that so? Let's see. You see that from here to here, we have 11, almost the size of an A4 paper. get the length rather of an A4 paper. We have 11, and so when you've gotten out your length, the next thing you do is you fold it into two equal parts. Two equal parts. And so from here to here is 1.5 inches. 1.5. And from here to here is exactly 2.2 inches. You could use 2 if you want to. Okay. So after that, you've gotten the shape. Trim it out and reduce this. So the reason we have this is that it could help us have a perfect shape on the materials. And then you may be wondering what materials are involved. We have this. It's called the marking touch. You notice it's shiny. And the essence is so that it won't allow the fleece to penetrate. That's it. And we have our warden already cut out in this shape. Our warden, we'll be using 4 of it. And the next material we have, it's called the lacquer material. It is skin friendly. Yes, lacquer material. And the last of it, we have this. It's a toy-like material. And it's used for the base of the pants. So let's begin. So this is our paper. When once you've gotten this, you fold it at this point. And so you have your warden, you place it in 4, and then you cut it out. So that's what gives you this shape. So once you've done that,
I think we can continue with the rest of the video so that other presenters can present. You can click on the link. Angel, Chingwang,
Yes.
I think other presenters can take the floor.
Okay.
You can click on the links on the presentation and watch the videos. We had to send the videos by WhatsApp to the community since they don't have access to data. And the girls or the women that had the phone sat around with other girls and then learned how to make the washable parts. That is what was done. So because we wanted a recording of what we did, we uploaded it on the YouTube so that other girls around the world can also use locally available materials to make eco-friendly menstrual pads. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Annie.
Thank you.
Okay. So next one, I will introduce our special guest, Nixie Zhang. And before introduce her, we will play a performance video to audience. Please. Okay, profile, please, for speakers, Daisy Zhang.
Good morning from Taiwan. I am Daisy Chan, Tainan Junior High School student, and I am in special music program. The special music program was designed to turn talented young musicians in Taiwan. Women's period normally is a taboo in Taiwan society. Thus, I choose rainy night flowers as Taiwanese folk song to celebrate International Women's Day to meet with this event's topics. Thank you for having me to share my video performance and inviting me as a special guest today.
Thank you, Daisy. We will have our third speaker, our second speakers on the stage is Ms. Mosca Chai, who pull out the profile. Let me introduce her a little bit. She is psychologist and founder Feminist Monica Creativity Companies in Taiwan. And she will give us the following presentation.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Monica. Is my slide ready? And hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to join this event. We need to know women's menstruation during the pandemic. My name is Monica. I'm based in Tainan, in southwestern Taiwan. I'm a sex educator and also a sexologist. I specialize in sexuality education and consulting therapy for individuals and couples who have the sexual health issues. And today we are going to talk about the pandemic stress affects women's menstrual cycle. Next slide, please. And we are very lucky in Taiwan since the COVID-19 global pandemic started for nearly a year and a half. We just have an outbreak of COVID-19 transmission in late May 2021. And many people had some changes on their life. They have lots of stresses, including a lack of money. They cannot go out for work. They worry about they have to buy the food and toilet papers to stay home, and they don't have time because they have to take care of their children's, and they have to clean the house and cooking at the same time because their daily routine has changed. And also the parents need to worry and anxiety around COVID-19 since the news is continuing broadcasting about the transmission cases increasing every day. And also the children's worry about the COVID-19, they cannot go to school. They have to online homeschooling. And also the children want to go out play with friends, but they cannot go out. And the parents need to be the children's friends. They also need to be their caregiver, and they also need to be their teacher at the same time. Especially most of the time, the mother is the main caregiver in family. And next slide, please. And all the stresses can cause the women's menstruation. And how does it work? The stress is part and parcel of everyone's life, from getting up in the morning with an alarm alarming late to our work. Everything is associated with minor degree of stress, which we don't realize on day-to-day basis, but when it becomes a very big stress, then we just realize that actually this stress is happening right now. And when the manifestation of the of stress start coming, then we realize that we are under stress. So that so what happens is when our body is under stress, there is release of hormone called cortisol from the brain, a stress hormone, and that cortisol will act on every part of our body to accommodate it to fight that stress. So like cortisol will act on our body, including our reproductive hormones in chronic stress state. Persistent stress leaves us suspended in fight or flight mode in threatening situations. A hormone pathway in the body called hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which links to the brain, which the adrenal gland encourages the release of the stress hormones called cortisol, preparing us to respond to the threat. So, however, if the brain is telling the body needs to respond all the time to anxious thoughts, changing circumstances, the stress of homeschooling, the impact of loneliness or illness, and regulated cortisol can suppress the normal levels of reproductive hormones in the body. This can lead to abnormal ovulation, which will disrupt the cycle and even pause it altogether. Stress can make your periods heavier, show up late, or stop altogether. The main reason why stress affects our menstrual cycle is because of the hormones. The release of the stress hormones or cortisol can suppress normal levels of reproductive hormones, potentially lead to abnormal ovulation or amenorrhea. The level of cortisol usually increases during the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle. Cortisol might not increase during periods, but an increase in cortisol could result in an ovulation and longer cycles. Next slide, please. And women are twice as likely as men to experience anxiety according to the World Health Organization's data. When there is a crisis or there is a problem happening, it tends to be the female partner in the relationship who will be the one to take off everything. During the pandemic, and suddenly suffering from the anxiety and depression, it's creating an anxious response if you are at a level of overwhelming stress that you might even be aware of you are adding in work stress, family stress, and suddenly the women are not able to cope. So what is anxiety? How do you recognize it, and when you what can you do about it is very important. Next slide, please. So next, I will share some research data. The first is from Japan, which analyzed the data in September 2021 from 871 students with regular menstrual cycles who complete the premenstrual symptom questionnaire. Fear of COVID-19 scale and the impact of the event scale. And the scores was significantly higher in women with COVID-19 induced post-traumatic stress symptoms than in the non-one. And as research data revealed that the COVID-19 has caused an unprecedented global pandemic, premenstrual symptoms included mood-related behavioral, and physical symptoms that are limited to the menstrual cycles. And psychosocial stress is a risk factor for premenstrual symptoms. And next slide, please. And this study is talking about the menstrual cycles of the women with regular cycles and affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. This study is in the May 2020. The study complete with 263 participants, and the average ages of the participants was 18 to 45 years old. With the COVID-19 pandemic, increased anxiety scores, increased women's menstrual symptoms when the length of the periods and the numbers of the pads used decreased. The increase in the degree of anxiety and stress as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak was found to be high enough to affect the characteristics of the menstrual cycle in women surveyed. So the COVID-19 pandemic has caused enormous psychological distress, potentially resulting in the development of the post-traumatic stress disorder. And the menstrual cycle is a process that can be affected by psychological stress. And these two studies contribute to our understanding of the implications that the pandemic may have on women's reproductive health. And next slide, please. And I want to share a case story. And she is a 36-year-old elementary school teacher in Taiwan. She has a 28-day cycle for many years and can usually time her periods to within 5 days. But things have changed since that last year, the outbreak of pandemic, because the students need to be online homeschooling. She needs to make sure every kids have the online devices and remind their parents to get those kids on time. And at the same time, she needs to be an IT engineer to fix all kinds of internet problems. Microphone is okay, check the chat box to see the students answer the answers and the interactions online. And she also needs to have the laptop and the mobile at the same time when she is teaching the class. Meanwhile, she also needs to be prepared the recorded versions for students and upload it. Make sure every student know how to upload their homework and test. The workload is heavier than before. She has so stressful, and her period is like for few days, then it stops and it start again and then stop bleeding again for 6 weeks. And the menstrual cycle is totally out of control. She said she became more anxious during this outbreak last year. So yes, the stress and anxiety can cause the menstrual cycle irregular. So the last thing I'd like to say is that it's very important for women to try to recognize what else is going on in our lives. And it could be making the symptoms feel worse. Even our experience of maybe period pain or the simply understood as the walls of the womb contracting to help the linear shade can be affected by our emotional state. Studies have also linked painful periods to working in insecure jobs with little emotional support. So, which speaks to the evidence showing that the stress can deepen our perception of pain, and pain can be stressful, and stress can be painful. Next slide, please. And today, thanks for listening, and thank you for everyone to join this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tai. It's so informative from Taiwan's conception for the pandemic issue. Can I ask, based on your professional background and experiences, can you give us some suggestions to regarding reducing stress for the homeschooling teachers?
Yeah. When the stress, it's not just about the teachers, and maybe lots of people, just like every woman who have under stress problem, they can do something about to make their life better. There are many natural ways to reduce your cortisol level, some of them including getting the right amount of sleep and exercise. Exercise can increase the heart rate, which can de-stress yourself. And also you can learn to recognize the stressful thinking and learn how to relax, something like meditation. And also you can eat some healthy foods and use the period tracker, because everyone, most of us have the mobile phone. You can download the apps to track your periods. What I recommended, something that's just been working very really well for me, is to get the app, because you can track and record the period. Some of the apps you can put the details about your emotions, blood flow, physical symptoms on every single day on your period, and you can track that quite nicely. And the other things that I really like about the period tracker is that I can actually write the notes, so I can actually write a detailed description of exactly what is happening during my day. And many women I work with who either aren't ovulating or experience sporadic periods due to the high stress, feel as their body have betrayed them. I sense their frustration and resentment when they tell me that they are doing everything perfectly to optimize their health, eating well, exercising, sleeping 8 hours a night, but their hormones just won't cooperate. So what many women might not get right away, that this effort to be perfect could be what holding them back to fixing their periods in the first place, in order to regulate the ovulation to restore the fertility. We have to address both real and perceived stress, so that our bodies can feel safe again. Sometimes it means that more than simply taking up yoga or meditation for some, it could look like scaling back on our work if possible, or mending a broken relationship, delegating household chores, stepping down from social obligations, breaking free to restrictive eating patterns, or simply doing the emotional work to free themselves of resentment and fear. Okay, and that's it. That's my recommendation.
Thank you for your recommendation. So can I ask one more questions? Technology is raised her hand. Can you turn on the microphone?
Hi, Changju. Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask, there are many period trackers and period apps. Which of them do you recommend? Can you just drop the link on the chat box so that it could serve as, we could go back to it, share with our friends too, because there are a myriad of period trackers. Not all of them have the ability for you to use it as a diary to write out your emotions, because I know the process of writing down an emotion or emotion that is felt is a healing process too. It will also help to reduce cortisol levels too and act as a distressor. If you can express the pain that you feel, a pain that is expressed either in paper or in writing or expressed to another person, helps to reduce the stress to some extent. So if you don't mind dropping the link on the chat box, I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Okay, I already put the links on the chat box to share. Everyone can use the period trackers.
Thank
Wow,
you.
great.
Thank you.
Okay, my problem is regarding to the stress for the menstrual cycle. For Korean women, could we like seems it like kind of labor. Um, can we like if we have like kind of symptoms for stress from the workplace, could we apply for like labor insurance for covering that?
I'm not sure about the insurance things.
Okay, because yeah, in like I don't know in Taiwan. I'm not sure in Taiwan whether we have like kind of a career affection. Like if we got the problems from the workplace, we can get the insurance cover or from labor insurance. But I'm not sure whether women can cover it by labor insurance.
Maybe we can ask some government official like healthcare bureau or some people, some the government who take care of the women and
Mhm.
have the labor, maybe like 卫生局.
Oh, okay.
They probably have this kind of task to take care of the women who have this kind of questions. Yeah.
So do your patients ask similar questions as mine?
No.
Oh, really? Okay, great. All right, thank you for your sharing today. And please, we will have our next and our last speakers, Dr. Sifan. And please pull his file. Finally, Dr. Sifan Okorochukwu is the founder of Center for Public Health, an organization he started from the University of Nigeria as an undergraduate with 7 of his friends. Then a university-based organization, he nurtured it to national organizations that is operating in 24 states out of 36 states in Nigeria. Under his leadership, Center for Public Health was granted special consultative status to ESCO of United Nations in 2010 and 2015, was associated with United Nations Department of Public Information now. Department of Global Communication Center for Public Health is now registered in New York, United States, with status. Zambia, Kenya, and Rwanda offices will be opened before the end of this year. CPH networked with others associations is informing Global Action Network with 32 members, currently a platform to advance the health of women all over the world. He is also the convener of 10 million voices for menstrual hygiene management. So let's welcome Dr. Sifan.
Thank you so much, Cheng. I'm happy to be in this call and
Thank
to
you.
join the conversation. I thank all the presenters who presented before me. It's a powerful presentation. We all are speaking the same language and saying almost the same thing. I'm happy the world have understood that menstrual hygiene or menstrual health is a very important topic. It's a part of reproductive health. The problem we are having, especially during the pandemic, which I participated actively, was that wrong classification of menstrual materials as a sanitary materials instead of health materials. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, when we are trying to form what we call the palliative banks, during the committee meetings, people were busy writing the list of food items, emergency drugs. When I told them that we have to include sanitary pads, tampons, they were surprised. Why should we be talking of menstrual materials? I said, no, this is a health product. It's something that is natural. It is involuntary. During the pandemic, Nigeria is a population of about 200 million. Out of the 200 million, we have about 100 million women. Out of this, people within the menstrual age constitute about 80% of this population, which means there are about over 80 million women menstruating during the pandemic without adequate arrangements for their materials. So you find out that menstrual materials are not seen as an important item during emergencies, during pandemics. So I urge, because my experience during this pandemic have shown that is not on the forefront. We have to really seek, advocate, lobby, and push it for reclassification of menstrual materials like sanitary pad. In fact, I've stopped calling it sanitary pad. I call it menstrual pad. But when you call sanitary pad, it's really a sanitary material. And that's why it attracts heavy tax. In Nigeria, for instance, imported menstrual pads and tampons attract as high as almost 30% import duty. But if it is classified as health product, it will enjoy waivers like other health products like condom, syringes, or gloves. So during this pandemic, like I said, you find out that nobody gave it attention for it to be stockpiled as part of emergency products. Then the place of telemedicine and the menstrual hygiene, especially during emergency and pandemic, because most people, they were locked down, people were not coming out. Most of the calls we received bordered on menstrual disorders and other, because of the, like the last speaker just said, stress. There were changes in their menstrual dates. Some are prolonged, some were bleeding, some were having scanty blood flow. But we know because of the stress they are being subjected to, an unusual environment, all these things, we were able to counsel them, supply most of them requested for pregnancy testing kit, because some of the married ones thought they were pregnant, but when they tested, it was negative, and we were able to really allay their fears that it's because of the stress that changed their dates. Then another thing I would like to talk about, I already mentioned about the classifications, which makes it attract heavy tax. So we will demand, and as time goes on, for classification of menstrual pads, tampons, menstrual cups as health materials, health products, or medical devices. Then if it's classified as such, especially in the school clinics, in public places, all these things need to be placed as a health emergency product. So most times women might be waiting for their flight, interconnecting flight, without knowing that their period is going to come out. You find most of them running health skater in the airports, in the malls, or bus stations, without all these things being available. Next slide. like I said, we must be insisting, like most of the letters I'm writing to the authorities, that menstruation is one of the reproductive processes in the female system. And also it should be included in the SDG Goal 3 as one of the milestones or indicators. Unfortunately, it didn't appear anywhere in SDG 3, although mental health has been smuggled in, but menstruation or menstrual health has not been smuggled in. We keep on the advocacy, we keep on shouting until it is accommodated. Like I maintained, all the materials used during the menstruation should be classified as a health product or medical devices. In many countries, especially here in Nigeria, it attracts heavy tax. And because of this heavy tax, it makes it it's not affordable by most of the families. That's why they resort to usage of rags, paper, some used leaves, and all sorts of materials, which can attract infections to the reproductive tract. Next slide. We are aware that only few countries, about 20, only Kenya and I think Kenya and Rwanda, that have removed taxes on menstrual materials. This should form part of our advocacy, because without removing the taxes on menstrual materials, the cost will still remain very high. For instance, products like condom are not being taxed and provided free. Condoms are something that can be used involuntarily. Voluntarily, I mean, but menstruation is an involuntary act. It's a must in most women that they have to occur. So they should be supported, and this material should be provided at no cost to them. And as I maintain, because of non-classification of these materials, the cost is still very high compared to the condom that are not being taxed, which are provided during sports, is in the stadium, is in the public spaces. So with $2, you get a pack of condom. With $2, you get a pack of pad, which will last a month. So I don't know which one should take a priority. Yes, both of them are very important, but we should place more priority on seeing menstruation as a health issue, which a woman should face every month. Next slide. Also, we tried during the pandemic to supply the menstrual materials to all the public places and people at home through the telemedicine we operated, just to help the families that needed it. And most of the reusable parts we were able to get, we are quite few in number, was not able to go around. During the pandemic, we really had the issue of disposal of these sanitary pads. You know, blood has a way of decaying so fast and pushing out odors. So waste management, especially with the sanitary pads, became a problem. But in my city, we were able to organize the environmental protection unit and see how we can collect those pads and incinerate them. So in summary, what I'm trying to classify is that, one, we seek the reclassification of menstrual materials to be a health product instead of a hygiene or sanitary product. Two, we also advocate for these materials to be provided in public places, especially schools, stadiums, airports, hotels, and areas that the women can easily have access to them in case of emergency. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sifos sharing. I have questions regarding that you just mentioned that you advocate for the menstrual materials in public places, like such as schools. So in schools, the range of the school is like elementary schools and high school or so?
Most elementary schools have you have some girls that start seeing their period early in life. Most of the primary school, especially the last grade, there are possibilities some of them might start seeing their menstrual period. Post what we call primary school year in Nigeria or elementary, that's from grade 7 upwards. Any school that can accommodate it in their clinics or with the school dispensary for them to have an access to it.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask one more questions regarding the wrong classification for the Senate for the tax?
Yes, most
What?
most countries' classification of menstrual pads is classified as as toiletries, as
Oh.
sanitary materials, and not as a health product.
So
For
how
instance, in Nigeria, most of the health products, the taxes are about 5%,
see?
but menstrual pad attracts a tax of almost 30%, making
Wow.
the cost higher.
See, but in because comparing to Taiwan, health product is much more expensive than consumption products. So we could give some advocate for this in Taiwan. Yes.
So, and then we found out that during the pandemic, COVID pandemic that just stopped, the attention we shifted to manufacturing of health products like face masks, gloves.
Mhm.
Nobody talked about manufacturing more of the menstrual pad. That's why during this period, it was a little bit scarce.
Okay. Thank you for oh, you just mentioned the sanitary bank. You expand more specific for that or the last slide?
Let me get your question.
Yeah, you just mentioned in the last slide for the sanitary bank. What's that? The sanitary bank.
Oh, during the pandemic, we created what we call the menstrual pad bank. It's like a pool
Oh,
where we collected the menstrual pads, tampons, and other materials because we had a hotline of any emergency people that need them, we can supply them easily during the
wow.
lockdown and the pandemic. And
Oh,
the problem we had is that when we were we had some donors outside the country. When we wanted the courier services to help us move it to the Nigeria, they refused. That is not part of essential items.
I see.
You see the wrong classification. But if I didn't mean that it is classified as a health product, as a health emergency product, because a woman that is menstruating must have something to stop it. If not, it brings the stigma, it brings emotional problem. If they have their clothing stained, bedding stained, it has a lot of psychological effect on them. I know when my daughter first time saw her menstruation and she went to bed, woke up, the whole bed was soaked with blood. She locked her down, started crying. And is when the mother said, "But I told you that at your age, this thing can come out anytime." But maybe out of shock, he was surprised to wake up and see her bed filled with blood. So such things happens. And if it's just that we are prepared that yes, from 11, 20 years, it can come. Some families are not aware that such thing can come out. And during the pandemic, it was a big, they were calling, some families were panicking. Even girls age of 9, we are seeing their period, 10 years, we are seeing their period during the time.
Wow. Thank you for sharing so informative for us in Taiwan. Thank you. Well, it's regarding our today's topic. As we know, menstruation, women's menstruation is still a taboo in Taiwan also, and is considered a disease in some Taiwan's rural areas. So even in the workplace, kind of bias. But like Ms. Tai mentioned that the age of menarche varies by individual. So menstruation ignorance can put women's health at risk. based on our sharing regional menstrual health education from Nigeria and Taiwan experience to audience during the pandemic. I think today's women's health awareness is very effective to audience. And right now we can open some questions for audience. If you want to ask, you can leave the message in the message box, or if there are any more discussion or more content that all the speakers want to share with us.
Yeah, like I told you about the 10 million voices we are trying to create across the world. We are trying to create the demand for the guests talk, let them talk by themselves, and demand for free pads from the government. It is their right. Because some items are prepared. This is the type of the bias we need to break.
Yes, indeed.
Menstruation is a part of reproductive health. Separating from there is a capitalist reasoning to make more profit. Imagine the world where 1.8 billion people are menstruating every month, the type of money they're reckoning. So we have to break that bias, break the jinx, classify it as a health product, an emergency one for the girls. Most times, when the girls started having problem of infertility from blocked tube, when they have their reproductive tract infected, it advances. It can block the tube. It can cause scarification of the endometrium in uterus and a lot of growth. You can now see a girl of 20, 30 years coming with a fibromyalgia and all these things. That must have been something that stimulated the system to stop keloids or some other masses start growing. All these things are still being investigated. But these are areas that when we start early in life to teach them the menstrual hygiene management and provision of the materials at a subsidized cost or free. They deserve to be free. So I expect the women associations to lead the advocacy, and I think the tempo is increasing, the volume is increasing. With time, everybody, by time 10 million people will be talking about it, the world will wake up.
You're right, Dr. C. Fine. And we appreciate the fact that the he for she is speaking up in the women's space. Because when the men lend their voices to a cause like this, it will, gather momentum for us to achieve our aim. Reclassifying menstrual pads as healthcare products is one bias we must break before 2030. If we
Thank you
have
so
a
much.
target, if we set a target to it and we start in our very little spaces to talk about menstrual pads, free menstrual pads banks in secondary schools, in bus stations, in marketplaces, so that if someone cannot afford a menstrual pad, he or she knows where to go. And your ticket should only be that you're a woman. That should just be the password to get a free menstrual pad. And I'm thinking that in our own little spaces, we should start the hashtags and have a specific day for spreading the hashtags every week or every time, or if you pick a particular time of the day of the week, every week, and do that for the next 2 years. Some countries, some cities, some nations, some clans will see the need to reclassify menstrual pads, to see the need to subsidize the cost of menstrual materials, and also see the need to develop a menstrual bank in little cities, in suburbs, in essential places like train stations, airports.
Exactly.
Yes, and banks. There's some banks you enter and you suddenly start menstruating. I've had a very fun experience where I was in the queue and the woman behind just started menstruating and she didn't know. So we just shielded her from behind, took her back, and I always keep a pad in my bag. Imagine if, we're an all male standing on the queue, what would have happened to that woman? We should learn as women to protect our own. and to also always have a pad in your bag. You don't know whose life you would save from embarrassment. That is my take for today.
Yes, I was in the airport one day and a woman sitting by my side, she wanted to get up. All her back was soaked. She never knew.
Mm.
I dragged her attention. I said, sit down. She sat down. I told her, you are stained at the back. She was shocked. And luckily, she has a jacket. She just tied up her jacket and walked towards the convenience to clean it up. So most times, people should, if we continue, like you said, control with the hashtag, encourage our people, our network to post it every week in their social media, talk about it in the workplace, in the meetings, in the church. I mean, by the time we get talking, before next 1 year or 2 years, everybody will know that these are necessary.
Thank
Yes,
you.
indeed. So, in this kind of hashtag, can I ask Dr. Arnie, maybe your reusable pads workshop can cooperate with Dr. Siphons to sell to audience? Is it possible for that?
What's the washable
The,
parts?
yes, and reusable pads can be
Okay,
can
so
sell
far
into.
we have not sold our parts. Usually what we do is we source for money from well-meaning individuals,
Oh,
philanthropic organizations, and we produce those parts for specific communities. But if we find sponsors who are able to, subsidize the cost of those parts,
mhm.
we will put a little token on them because we all actually don't want parts to be sold. If it's
I see.
possible to have people who people give out condoms for free. An average size condom, the cheapest of the condom is the cost of one pad.
Oh,
Exactly. And the one part is going to last for a month.
And you can actually walk into any hotel and take as much as 10 packs of those condoms for free. Someone is sponsoring them. Is it possible to have someone sponsor? Just give us one pad per girl child. So give us 1,000 pads every month. Let's start like that. And we can increase the number as time goes on. So if we find people who are willing to sponsor the production of these pads, we could develop a bank in every city and say, okay, the washable parts last 1 year to 18 months. If you have taken for this year, you have settled that lady. Or at most give every woman 2 washable parts per year. And the woman is settled for 2 years, So if we have people who are able to support the production of those parts, there are other NGOs in Nigeria who make washable parts. And some of them make them and they offer them at very little prices. But for us as Pink Africa, we are looking for sponsors who will help us develop this menstrual bank in different parts of different cities so that you can just be one phone call away. All you need to do is just pay transport, come pick it up from us, or let us know, we will send it to where you are. So that's basically what we're looking for.
Especially in the remote areas on the countryside, where
Exactly.
most of the people there can't afford, even if you give it at 1 cent,
They can't afford to buy it.
they can't afford to buy it. And also people in the slums, and you find out if you go to slums, a lot of terribles are happening there. So that's what I call the urban rural areas.
all of us need to do more work for seniority back to either in Taiwan or Nigeria, because in Taiwan we also have some problem for the high price of seniority pads. It's kind of expensive, right? All right, we have only 5 minutes left. Can Ms. Tai give us our final recommendation for this meetings, or give us some words?
Okay, then one more last thing I want to share, that is because I'm talking about the stress and the women, because in our society, the women is also they have to work and they have to take care of the children and family members. They have to do the housework. I think the housework should be shared with among the family members, not just the mother to do this their kids and the husband, everyone in this family should do something about it for the family, not just only mother to do this. As Angel mentioned earlier about the career woman, because the women take a lot of responsibilities to do lots of things and tasks. So every family members need to realize that the mother and as a wife, she has lots of things to do. So we can share some things to release the stress from as a woman, as a mother, and as a career woman, and as a wife. Yeah.
Please, can I respond to Chai Jong? Can I respond?
Monica.
Oh yeah, Monica. Let me respond. Sorry. I have learned over the years that the issue with house chores, rest with us as mothers. I have 2 boys and a girl in between. We owe it to ourselves to raise the children on the same pedestal. What I do with my kids are aged between 8 and 12. We have specific days and specific chores, and there is no gender difference with the chores. No gender difference. Today is Daniel's turn to wash the plate. He washes the plate. And then recently I made it every week to perfect the skills of washing plates or sweeping. Tomorrow it's Praise's turn to sweep. She sweeps for the whole week. And we alternate like that from one day to the next week, to the next month, so that the children grow up with a sense of responsibility. There should be no gender difference in household chores. The only place where gender difference is expected is when you have to give the girl child some degree of privacy when she begins to attain puberty. But with respect of chores, please, we owe it as women to raise our children to have mutual respect for each other, especially with respect to household chores. That is the way forward. If we start it in our own little homes from day one, we will breed a society that has respect, mutual respect for house chores. Everybody cooks. When it's time for Daniel to cook, he cooks. Anyhow the food turns out, we eat it. When it's time for Praise to cook, she cooks. Anyhow the food turns out, we eat. And they end up, helping each other. Oh, I can do this better. Let me help you. That way we are able to raise a community of men and women who help each other to attain their God-given rights and responsibilities. That's my response to you.
I totally agree with Dr. Annie. Yes, it's no difference between genders who needs to do the housework. Everyone has the responsibility to do this. It's not about just the genders.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for your time today, and hope that today's meeting it will be end. So hopefully we can meet next year.
Someone has their hands raised. Josephine.
Okay.
Hi, Josephine. Unmute yourself.
Josephine,
I have
can
1
you
minute.
turn on yours microphone? Hi, Josephine. Do you still have questions? Or she just pressed the wrong button? Oh, I supposed to. Okay. Time is almost down. So thank you for your attention today. And hopefully we can meet next year in NGO CSW 67. Thank you for your take. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Say
Bye.
Thank you,
bye.
Daisy. Thank you,
Bye.
Monica.
Daisy.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Stefan.
Dr. Annie.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Grace and
Thank you so
Edna
much.
and Gather and Joy. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Udwa.
Dr. Annie.
I learned a lot, especially from Monica and Dr. Sifine. We must have
Feel good.
I learned so much. we have to work together to get this thing done.
Exactly. You have my support, 100%.
Thank
We have to
you.
work together. Thank you.